you guys. Welcome to Luminous Raw channel and podcast. Today we have our special guest, Marta Spirk. She is one of my clients and she is a six-figure entrepreneur, visibility expert, TEDex speaker, author, singer and songwriter, and podcast host. So I'm so happy to have you here, Marta, and I would like for you to share your experiences with your juice fasting, with your transformation on this journey, and what led you to make a decision to step on this path.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I've been raving about this experience, so it was a total no-brainer to say yes to this conversation. So what led me to embark on the juice fast was learning more about your business as you joined some of my programs and I helped you in crafting a signature talk. So I always joke with my clients that if they want me to hire them, they need to work with me because since I work with messaging as, a visibility strategist and in helping women with speaking, I have to understand what you offer so that I can help you craft your talk or craft your marketing in a way that will help people understand what you have to offer and why they need it, which in turn makes me interested, right? If I am creating content to help people see the value, then I start seeing the value and I become a great candidate. So that's what happened in helping you craft your signature talk and asking you, okay, so what's the transformation? Can you give some client examples? And as you were sharing some of the client stories and the transformations, I was like, oh my gosh, this seems so amazing. I want to give it a try. But it did take how long? I think it was about 6 months, right? After working with you and continuing to see then your content on social media, because I started paying more attention, right? And since I already knew you, I already trusted you, I was like, why not try? And also backstory, I have gone on different diets and I've tried different nutrition systems throughout the years. And specifically last year, I had to go through a surgery and it kind of put me in a place where I felt really stuck with my eating habits and with just the way I felt about myself and the way that I looked. And nothing that I tried worked. Everything that I had done before, I gave it a shot again, and it just wasn't really working, not only in terms of weight loss, but in how I felt about myself. It just wasn't sticking. So that's when I was like, let's try something crazy. Because in my mind, doing a juice fast seems so like out of this world. Like, who can survive? But then again, looking at your story, and recently is when you finished a very long-term fast of almost a year. And I see, that you lead a great life and you look healthy and you look amazing. And I thought, why not give this a try and see what happens? So that's what that's what led me to it initially.
Now, a lot of people ask me if my clients feel scared. Did you feel any fear of doing that, or was it just easy decision for you?
So the decision was easy. As we got closer and I had to start preparing, I started feeling overwhelmed. And that's when I reached out to you and I said, what's the shopping list? How many freaking million bananas, or not bananas, apples and oranges am I going to have to buy to juice? Because then that's when I understood, you got to get a juicer, right? I understood the steps. You got to buy a juicer. A certain amount of fruit is going to yield a certain amount of juice. You have to drink a certain amount per day to actually sustain yourself and have energy. And then, especially when in talking to my husband, he's like, oh my gosh, how many hundreds of dollars are you going to be spending a week where are you going to store all this stuff? Like it became really overwhelming to me because I have a family, I have to prepare meals for everyone. We need to go grocery shopping. So that's when I started feeling overwhelmed. But then you reassured me, you gave me the shopping list. And what I did was, because there was a specific time frame that I was going to go on a trip, I wanted to start when I was going to be home and I could control my environment. I didn't want to do it if I was going to be out of town because that wasn't going to work. So before then, since we had already started working together, I decided to prepare myself and start trying it out. So I bought the juicer. I committed to drinking at least one juice or replacing one of my meals, usually breakfast, with the juice to see how it felt. Because again, it seemed so crazy to just drink some juice and feel okay. So I was like, let's baby steps. And then that made it more feasible for me.
So approaching it with baby steps, did you create a routine for yourself? Did you have to do juices the day before? Did you do it during the day? How was your routine on the juice fast?
Yeah, so it really depended on my schedule and what I had going on. But I always made it a point on the weekend, have a longer period of time where I was making several juices. Also keeping in mind, so that was one of the questions that I asked you is how long is a juice good for in the fridge? And once you instructed me on that, I was like, all right, so I can do it pretty much every other day, depending on how much I'm drinking, because that was something else. When I first started it out, I couldn't finish all of the juices that I was supposed to drink that day. So I had some left over for the next day. So that helped me with the pacing. So I didn't also feel so overwhelmed that I'm going to have to spend 3 hours, to do, because in my mind, it just seemed like this huge monster in a mountain. But then it got to a point where, oh my gosh, I ran out or I drank more today for whatever reason, that I could make a couple juices in 30 minutes. So, I could just rinse everything, wash it, leave it out to dry. And then when I have more time is when I put stuff in the dishwasher, right? So I have a better procedure and process for everything. But it became something not as daunting as I started doing it. And I just would have to think, when do I have 30 minutes or 1 hour because I'm running out and I need to make more? And it just became a part of my routine. It wasn't anything so crazy anymore.
Did you have to make any significant changes in your schedule because of juice fasting, or you rather adopted juice fasting to your schedule? Because I
I
know
thought,
you're so busy.
I thought it was going, and that's another reason why I felt overwhelmed. It's like, how long am I going to have to be standing here cutting up all these things? And now it's just so easy for me. It's really not that hard. Like even some of the fruits that take a little bit more time, like oranges, because you have to actually cut off all the peel. I've come up with my own little process and it really is not that hard. I can do several in like an hour. 30 minutes is just like, I'm hungry and I ran out, I can get something out and drink it. But if I have about an hour, then that's more ideal because I can make more and I don't have to rush. I can wash everything afterwards, you know what I mean? But it was, it really wasn't that hard to incorporate, especially when you compare to the infamous meal prep that people talk about, right? Take the whole freaking Sunday, get all these containers and meal prep. That was always something that it just was not my reality. I never did that. At most I would cook some stuff ahead of time and leave it on the fridge to then assemble. But I was never the person that had the containers labeled Monday, it was never my thing. So I am very grateful that this does not require that at all, especially because it has to be fresh. And then that was another thing that made me think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do it every other day. That's so much work, but it really isn't.
Yeah. And did you feel any hunger? Because a lot of people think, oh my God, I don't eat anything. I'm going to feel so hungry and I'm just going to starve myself. And I don't know how it's going to go. What is your experience with hunger on the juice fast?
It was actually the opposite. I felt pretty full. The first experience that I had before I did the full on fast was, I remember I made apple and ginger juice to start out with, and it was really sweet. It tasted delicious. I actually started feeling a little bit sick to my stomach because I started getting really full and it was very sweet. And I was not expecting that. And then that's when I realized I can actually, drink one of this and be okay for several hours. So that first experience already showed me that the potential concern of feeling very hungry was not a thing. I think it's mostly wanting to eat something else as opposed to feeling hungry. And I didn't really feel either of those during the 2 weeks, to be honest. Later in the day, because then my family had dinner, and that's usually when you start snacking, you're just sitting around watching TV before you go to bed, is when I would feel like, oh, I want something but I don't want juice. So that's when I would drink something different that I hadn't had throughout the day. Like I would start a new one that was for the next day. So I did a lot of that actually. I would start just so it was like novel. I would start a new juice at night and then finish it in the morning. And it was a smaller portion, but it was just kind of like a little treat for myself. But in terms of hunger, I did not experience it at all, which was very surprising to me.
That's great to hear. And that's experience of most of the people I work with, the sufficient amount of energy that we get from juice, and it's our natural fuel. And what was your experience with just realizing that, okay, I can survive on the juice? And did you have any energy improvements? Did you feel like any kind of energy dips, like when you felt low on energy, or was it more steady and consistent?
It was pretty steady and consistent. I think what was really surprising to me as well was that I could exercise, because that was one of the things that I asked you, should I make any changes? Like, what do I do? I was expecting, honestly, there to be a list of directions and instructions, and it was actually really simple. It was just suggestions, really, because I didn't even have to follow the specific recipes. It wasn't like you have to have this fruit at least once a day. You know what I mean? Like this juice at least once a day. I was expecting it to be a lot more strict as
Mhm.
opposed to whatever you like. If it's a fruit, juice it and drink it. And it has to be this amount. And then you can experiment mixing them, right? And then you have the recipes with the different things. But it's not that I had to commit to that, because that's when coming from my experience with diets before is at least once a day, have a fat, at least twice a day, have some carbs. And then you have to make sure, right? You're doing all the things and checking all the boxes. And that was not the case, which gave me a lot of freedom. And then especially now at this stage where I'm not doing juice only, I I gravitate towards what do I actually want to drink right now? And it's like, oh my gosh, it'd be amazing to have some pineapple juice. And then I just make it and I drink it. I don't have to force myself. You have to have carrot juice right now because that's the recommended. I just drink what I like and it feels great. And the whole working out thing was very encouraging to me that I did not, because I had done cleanses before, right? Detoxing. And usually what they say is light walk and go lay down, right? Don't do anything crazy. And I was using weights, I was using resistance band, I was doing cardio, I was doing my stationary bike, and I didn't feel any different than when I was eating. So
So you basically kept your exercising routine as it was prior to the juice fast, right?
yes, exactly. Same exact thing. And I didn't feel like I was weak or lightheaded, right? Because that's things that in the fitness industry, some people say, do not exercise on a fasted state, right? You need to eat at least something beforehand. And some people are like, do it fasted because that's the best and you don't ever know what to do. And I've actually done both to where I would wake up in the morning because sometimes I would wake up a little hungry. So right off the bat, so I would start drinking the juice and then I'd do my exercise and be fine. And there were other times when I would feel kind of full or a little bit sick to my stomach, depending on what I had had the previous night. And so I wouldn't drink right away. I would drink some water or not drink anything at all, do my exercise, and then feel a little bit hungry and have the juice. So whichever way it worked out. And I never felt lightheaded or like I was weak.
Did you feel deprived at all, like in your nutrition or in your cravings and taste or anything like this? Was there a feeling of deprivation, or was there something else?
So I was surprised at that as well, because I remember you kind of gave me some ballpark of what are you going to be feeling the first 2 days, the third day. And I think because I was so ready for a change. And again, I have put myself through different types of programs that were pretty strict, that were usually like a month long. So when you're telling me 2 weeks, do this for 2 weeks, I believe I have the willpower to be like, even if it sucks, it's going to be done in 2 weeks and then I can do whatever I please afterwards. So that's kind of the mindset that I went through this. Obviously, I wanted to continue on, especially after the results that I had, but I was coaching myself like that. Like, it's not that I will never be able to have anything ever again. I do have a choice. Let's just see what happens in these 2 weeks. And I felt fine. I did not, it was just that mindset of even it was harder, and those were some of the things that I shared with you over the weekend when my family was going out to eat, and we went to restaurants, and I would just be drinking water. It's not fun, right? But it's not that I was hungry or that I needed desperately to go and eat. It was just like, I'm going to sit here. I will drink some juice before I go. I will drink some juice when I get home, and everything's going to be okay. I had a couple instances where I had to go eat lunch with a friend, or, some networking meeting with somebody. And I specifically asked if we could meet at a place where I knew they made fresh juices. And I had a juice while they ate eggs and whatever for breakfast, and it's fine. And I told them, like, I'm doing this juice thing. And nobody laughed at me. No, because that's another thing too, is like, are people going to think I'm crazy? And there are people doing this kind of stuff all the time. Oh, I'm gluten free now, so I can't go to this restaurant, right? So I feel like at this day and age, we have so much more liberty, and a lot more acceptance from people when you say, I'm not eating these foods. Can we go at a certain place where I can have some juice? And that worked out too.
And talking about people, I'm curious about your experience. Did you feel supported by your family, by your friends? From what I hear, your people didn't mind you just having juice while they had their breakfast. And I think that's really awesome that, this kind of freedom that we give to each other in this day and age, that, okay, I need to take care for my health. So that's what I'm doing. And I think receiving this respect and encouragement from people is so important. What was your experience with your family, with your children, with your husband?
So I think my kids, they don't fully understand, but then it was funny because at times they'd be like, oh yeah, you're not eating. They would remember, like, why aren't you eating? And then they realize, oh yeah, you're not eating. When are you going to eat again? Like, they would ask me at times, but there wasn't a lot of resistance. That's when I started realizing it's a lot of how I handled the situation, right? So we are thinking people are going to judge me, so I'm not going to do it. And then you don't do it. It's actually an excuse, right? Because you don't want to do it to begin with. So it's easier to say they're going to give me crap, so I may as well not put myself through that, as opposed to whether they give me crap or not, it's still my decision. And they will forget it and they will go about their lives. And that's really what it boiled down to. And especially at home, as long as I was cooking meals and no one was starving or I was imposing juices on them. In fact, it was interesting because everyone wanted to try. Oh, this is watermelon. It looks so pretty. Can I try it? Can I try the juice? And then I have to be like, no, this is mine. I'll cut you the fruit. You eat the fruit, because even right now, as I'm making juices, they want to come and try. Sometimes they don't really like it. Once I started experimenting with other different things, they'd be like, oh, that doesn't taste good. But even the ones that were supposed to be like savory with garlic, one of my boys, he's like, when you make that one again, I want to drink it because it's so good. So it wasn't really that bad. I realized it's a lot on how I handle the situation. Because, like, again, with food allergies, if you have a food allergy and you can't eat that specific thing, what are you going to do? Feel like crap? Put yourself through something? Or especially could end up in the hospital because somebody's going to be like, oh, come on, eat it. Allergies aren't real. It's the same thing.
Exactly. I find it to be very empowering that we do have our freedom of choice at the end of the day when we need to take care. And again, you're a mother, right? You want to show up for your kids, for your husband, for your family in the best possible state that you can, right? At least that's what I do. And we all want to, shine our light and be supportive and strong and full of energy. So, and then also, you're showing your kids that the same power of choice, I think, right? That, okay, this situation happens in your life, there is another option and you can try some other things, right? I'm really curious, can you share some notable transformations in your physical health, in your emotional state, in your mental well-being? Did you feel like those aspects of your being are connected on a juice fast, or how did it go for you? What kind of changes did you experience?
Yeah, so there were definitely physical changes and also mindset shifts that, we've been talking about some of them right now. But obviously, one of the reasons why I wanted to try it was to take better care of my health and what I was consuming and how I looked and how I felt, because I had put on like around 12, 13 pounds ever since having that surgery, summer of 2022. And there was really nothing that I had done that was working. And it was very encouraging to notice that pretty much every day I was dropping around 1 to 2 pounds, sometimes even more. And by the time I finished the 2 weeks, I had lost. So, because when I started, that's something else that I want to say is when I started doing the partial, when I was just dipping my toes because I want to get ready and see how I felt, I already lost like 2, 3 pounds just by replacing, or sometimes it wasn't even replacing. It's just like, let me drink one juice a day and see how I feel. It already made a difference. And I was like, all right. So that encouraged me too. So that's something else that I will tell people if they're afraid is do that and see the difference already. And then you'll be encouraged to be like, imagine what can happen if I actually stick to this for 2 weeks. So overall, I lost 12 pounds. And it's been a little over a month now since I finished the 2 weeks. And I have kept that. I have maintained that, which has been also very encouraging. So that was it. And obviously feeling like better about myself, not only in my clothes, but when I see myself. And I mean, I take lots of pictures, I do lots of events and things around town. So it just made me feel so much better to see it's kind of like I'm back type thing, but even in a better way,
Mhm.
because I'm back thinking about weight wise, but I see myself in a better light than I think I did before. Because that was one of the things that I mentioned to you and I said I want to work together is that after putting on these several pounds, memories would show up like on my Facebook or just looking at things from the previous year. And I would see how much skinnier I looked. And I remember how I felt about myself in those days, in those pictures, when I looked really good from the outside perspective. I remember I wasn't happy with where I was. I thought something else needed to change. And this whole process, especially because of experiencing this feeling of being stuck and not being able to have any change in the weight, it made me realize that feeling good about myself is so much of an inner thing and not so much of the outer, which conceptually we know all this.
Mm.
But I actually felt it. I was like, what good does it do for me to be 10 pounds less or more, have a certain amount of body fat, that is really small, and still not be happy with where I am or who I am, and still be looking for something else that doesn't exist. So it almost took me being in this different place where I was not comfortable with how I looked to then appreciate how I used to be, but also realize I still wasn't happy. So now, having gone through this whole process, it was just a change that I needed to be like, what do I choose now that I lost this weight? Do I choose to still feel like there's something else that needs to be done for me to feel happy because it's never going to happen? I've lived long enough to know, and especially through the last couple of years. Or can I just be happy and embrace it? And that's a lot of what I'm living. So I'm very grateful for this experience. And along with that mindset shift as well, while trying to understand the benefits of the raw foods and the juices, you recommended me reading a book. And I started just looking at it because then my husband got interested, like, how are you not eating, protein and all those questions. And we started watching some stuff, found some documentaries. And there was this one documentary in particular that really focused on what children are encouraged to eat.
Mhm.
And that impacted me a lot because I realized here I am making changes to how I eat, but I'm still packing my kids' lunch for school with a bunch of crap. So I started feeling more, hypocritical over everything, but also feeling very responsible about how they would feel about themselves later on in life. You know what I mean? Like it starts now. And here I am trying to undo all of the stuff that happened to me from childhood because my mom and my parents didn't know any better.
Mhm.
And granted, times have changed. And I think even though there is more awareness of health, there is also a lot more access to not good stuff
Yeah.
because it's just, so easy. It's cheap. Talk about fast food, right? So, especially with kids, right? Kids are picky if you let them, but that's what the image that it's created, right? Kids are picky. They're only going to eat nuggets and mac and cheese. And so just eat buy that stuff and pack that stuff because it's all already packaged and it makes it easier. I have triplets. They're all the same age and it's just overwhelming. But after all of this, I was like, it's all a choice. If I'm taking the time to make these juices for myself, I can just as easily take time to make sure that they have fruits and vegetables in there every day in their lunchbox. So I went ahead and I bought these little containers. So every single day, besides their lunch and the other things that I do pack, and I try to make it so that it's more homemade than not, they have fruits and vegetables as well. So we changed a lot of what we were doing, especially because one of my boys started putting on some weight. We were already thinking about like we need to make better choices for them and present better choices. But this was like the final straw for me to be like, wow, if I really care about how they're going to feel in the future, their own self-esteem, it starts right now. I can't expect them, to make better choices in their 20s and in their 30s. Obviously they will have to for themselves, but if I can play a part, which I know I am, then I will.
Definitely. And I think it also might felt really empowering to you to know that you actually can model for them and can be an example of that. It's not necessary to follow what everyone follows, like eating mainstream food, if I may put it this way, but there are actually those healthier options that you're giving them access to right now in this life while they're little. And so they have this unique opportunity to actually learn healthy habits and stay with those habits, and especially seeing your experience and your impact on their life can be really huge, and it's big.
Definitely.
Were there any emotional shifts? I heard you say that you changed your perception of yourself, and I know that during Juice Fast you were in the process of releasing your song, and it was just amazing to witness you. I felt personally working with you that your connection to yourself, to your true authentic Marta beautiful spirit, got so much more expanded, and I just witnessed you blossoming and releasing your song and being happy. So how did that go for you in general, being on a juice fast and embracing new you in a way?
So I think a big realization that had a lot to do with this process of what I'm calling self-expression, of me just allowing myself to be who I am and put stuff out there without worrying, is it going to be accepted? Is this the right time? Should I wait more? And all of that. I guess the parallel with understanding that it doesn't have to be complicated and that it can be very simple. And that is the very reason why it seems like it's not right. That you have to add more steps, just like what I was saying. Like, you're not going to tell me I need to eat 3 carrots a day for this to work. It's just pick a juice that you like and drink it. It, and the fact that it's things that are available in nature, that I don't have to go and create something with this recipe and mix all of that. Like, it was almost like in many ways a grief or grieving the things that I had learned about life and about myself. Because wow, what if from the beginning I had known that all it took was for me to eat this way? And it doesn't. And also looking at how society has made everything revolve around food, right? Everything that you do, oh, let's go out to eat. Oh, let's have a party and we're going to order this and we're going to have this and we're going to have that. It's almost like you can't live without these things. But then if you're living this lifestyle, it shifts the way you look at celebrations and meeting with people. It was a lot of reflecting around everything that I had known up until this point wasn't true, or people were portraying it in a different way. So now I need to adjust to this new knowledge because now I saw this, right? I've experienced it. I can't deny that this is true. It's not just some crazy hippie person telling me, live off the earth. It's I've done it and it actually feels really good. So trying to reconcile what I knew before and this new information was as much as empowering as it also was a little bit of like a confusing and a little bit of grieving of what do I do now? What are my next steps? And how do I integrate this new information moving forward, knowing that I will participate in celebrations and the holidays, so how am I going to balance all of this out? And I think the connection with the music and with the self-expression is a lot, it has a lot to do with what I said earlier of how I feel about myself, that I don't have to wait for the perfect time, that it's not about getting that recognition from the outside. It's doing it just because it feels good and because I like it. And if I trust, people will follow suit as well, even if it's not immediate, right? So I mean, there's this connection of I can just be, and it doesn't have to be so hard, and things are actually going to flow a lot easier if I trust this process.
Yeah, I hear that so much. I know that I think in this society we created this idea that everything should be complicated and complex, and if it's not, then it's not working, or if it's not valuable. And truly, it just boils down to such simplicity, right? And I hear this grieving process. It's always when I work with my clients, this is the part that we go through is a grieving process. And I went through it myself, just with my experience of juice fasting, the same thing, recognizing that a lot of things just built around food, around celebration, but also my idea was, how do we celebrate in a different way, in a healthy way? How can we, even if everyone around us is doing things that are not good for our health and well-being, how can we stay strong in this process? And I think the very important part of it is being able to truly integrate this experience in your life, because you will go through the grieving process. You will go through changes, through challenges, through different kinds of things that you were not exposed to before and that you didn't try before. And I hear it so loud that, what if I've done it since the beginning? And I think stepping into it right now, like in our age, it's so empowering too, because it's like, yeah, we've been doing it for our whole life, but now we have this opportunity to experience something completely different. And as you said, like, feel this connection with yourself and feel that my self-expression is just my expression. I'm just having fun. I'm just feeling good and enjoying the process, right?
Yeah.
And one of my mottos for the juice fast is that you're supposed to feel joy. You're supposed to feel like you're doing something that brings you happiness, and it's not a torture. You should not
Right.
be putting yourself in this cage of like, okay, I cannot step here, I cannot step there. And this creativity and freedom of choice, there are so many fruits and vegetables. You can mix and match and do all sorts of different things and truly express yourself in every way possible. Did you encounter any very hard challenges in this journey, or was it more a smooth process? Did you have any setbacks, and how did you overcome those?
I think during the 2 weeks, like I said, it was pretty straightforward. And because I had the mindset of, I'll see how this goes. And then if it's not for me, then it's not for me. Afterwards, in reintroducing the foods, I think it was mostly trying to figure out and listening to my body as well, like following the protocols and everything that you had laid out for me, but also checking in with myself and seeing how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another reason why I wanted to go through this process. Because, I had heard also a lot about intuitive eating and people saying, oh, I lost all this amount of weight around, because I'm just following my body. But then there's other people that are eating intuitively, but I don't really think that they're living a healthy lifestyle. So it's very conflicting information, like intuitive eating, and my body's telling me I need a cupcake right now. Okay. So I wasn't sure, but I thought the concept was interesting because my body should be able to tell me what it needs, but I wasn't sure how that worked out. And I actually never really pursued it because it just seemed kind of iffy to me because of these two reasons, right? Some people say that they eat intuitively, they don't have a set schedule or they don't have a set amount of food or whatever. And they appear to be healthy, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know. It's just, aesthetics wise. And then there's the other side of the equation where it's like, I don't know what you're doing, but I don't think that this is healthy at all. But then this really allowed me, especially as I reintroduced the foods, to feel. So it wasn't somebody telling me a specific regimen. It was me realizing, oh, it's true that, if once you reintroduce these types of foods, you're going to feel more lethargic. A huge breakthrough for me was it's just a given that you get tired after you eat lunch, right? You need to have, there's whole cultures and countries that practice the siesta.
Yes.
And then being like, you don't ever have to go through this if you choose not to eat certain foods. So, wow, that's crazy. But then it was almost like I needed to go through that, even though you had told me, like, if you do this, you're going to feel this way. I needed to go through it to feel it and be like, this is the difference between juice only, raw foods only, and having these other foods, especially since my family is still, eating as they used to before. Granted, we've made some changes, like I mentioned, but it was crazy to realize that what I had heard or what I had learned, you need to eat protein. Every single meal needs to have some kind of animal protein or some kind of protein. And then realizing that those things are actually really heavy, that it takes so much longer for me to digest. And at times, waking up in the middle of the night, it was very interesting because I've never been a heavy alcohol drinker at all. But the times in my life where I had some extra alcohol, you feel hungover. So I know the experience of waking up in the middle of the night and being like, why did I do this? And it was very interesting that with reintroducing the foods, that was the feeling that I was feeling. It's almost like I had had a bunch of alcohol, but it was just food, like normal. Let's go out to eat, on a Friday. And like I would always have done before with my family. But then I'd find myself waking up 4 a.m. and it's like, I feel like crap. I need to sit up. I feel like I'm a freaking 6-year-old or 7-year-old. I need to sit up because it didn't digest. It didn't go through when normally I wouldn't have felt that way. It's because of the changes that I had made. So those were the main challenges besides mindset wise, was physically feeling the impact of the foods once I reintroduced and realizing that it's true. It doesn't feel good. Your body doesn't process it, So.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people eat for taste, and eating for energy is a pretty new concept for people like
Yes.
us. But a lot of my clients, and I believe you did too, experience this, that actually when I eat some light raw meal, I feel that energy and I don't need to take a nap after that meal. Those revelations, I think they're very powerful because we are able to cleanse our body and then tune back into those real sensations, like what truly benefits me and what doesn't. Because as you said, like intuitive eating, I think a lot of times people eat with their mental state. So, okay, I want a cupcake, but it's just a habit. We crave what we are made out of. Basically, if you've been eating cupcakes all your life and then you want a cupcake, maybe it's not just intuition, but it's more of a habit.
Right.
And that brings me to my next question, which one of my followers asked me to ask you. Did you have any cravings on the juice fast? And how did you deal with those if you did have the cravings?
So it may seem like I'm lying, but I really didn't. And I think it's because of the mindset of I'm going to try this for 2 weeks and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to survive. It's only 2 weeks. And because I didn't feel hungry, I feel like the cravings would have come had I been hungry, because that's usually what happens, right? That's what they say, don't go to the grocery store hungry because you're going to buy all the things that you shouldn't. And if I had put myself in situations that would have made it harder for me to resist, right? And like I said, I picked a specific time frame in my life and in my schedule where I wouldn't have those moments, right? Like if I was traveling to Paris and trying to do a juice fast for the first time in my life, probably not the smartest idea. But I didn't do that. So in the things that I did have, like I said, scheduled ahead of time, I made it a point to say, either let's go off for a walk so we don't have to involve food, which I've been trying to do that more now anyways, because I don't have to spend money. Walking is free, or going someplace where I knew they had fresh juice that I could drink and order. So it was just a combination of these things. Now, had I done it for a year, almost a year like you did, I'm sure I would have had more opportunities to have cravings. In the short period, I mean, I have to say, 2 weeks is really not that long. It really isn't. I think a month is a lot longer, obviously, math wise. But when you think 2 weeks, it goes by so fast. You're talking 2 weekends, right? That you could potentially have some issues because you're going out to eat with family or whatever. But I also noticed that if it was for my husband, we would cook at home a lot more than eat out. He's very much of a homebody. The kids ask, but they're not really in control. I was a lot more behind the eating out than my family even was. So if I'm the one saying we're eating at home, everyone's going to be okay with it. You know what I mean? Because I'm the one that cooks most of the time. So I was in charge. So it worked out.
That's very interesting because a lot of times we think that it's surmountable, you cannot achieve this experience or you cannot do it. But I love what you say. You take baby steps. You really break it down for starting just incorporating one juice a day. That's always my rule, and that's how I started myself. I just shifted to adding one juice a day to whatever I was doing before.
Mhm.
And then committing to 2 weeks doesn't seem so daunting. And that's another thing, is taking it one step at a time, one day at a time, and just experiencing, allowing yourself to experience the process and experience the results. Would you say that the process was enjoyable for you, or was it really hard to go with it?
No, it really was. And I just remembered something that I want to touch on. I was actually afraid of introducing fruits and vegetables because I remember the whole timing that I picked was because my parents were going to come to town after the 2 weeks. So I wanted to be able to at least, when we go out, eat a salad or do something, because it was not just my family, it was then coming, and they're coming from Brazil, so they're coming from out of the country. So I knew we were going to have different opportunities of eating out, and I wanted to be able to participate. When it was just my family, and they're going out to eat and I'm drinking water, that's fine. But with my parents being around, I was like, I want to at least be able to order like a side of fruit or something to be able to participate in the meal. One, I realized that wasn't really required. They were fine had I decided not to eat. So that was a lot in my mind. But the second thing was I was afraid of how I was going to feel, because it was almost like I already know how it feels to drink these juices. What if it totally messes me up and I start feeling sick? And they're here and we have to go places and we have to do things. So it reached a point where it was something I could keep on doing. And that's why I have kept on doing, with the juices. It was not like, oh, I can't wait for this 2 weeks to be done so that I can go back to my ways. I feel so good. This is so much easier than actually cooking myself a meal, to be completely honest. And that was why I started with the juices beforehand, was to test it out, but also because I thought, I spend the majority of the day by myself. The kids go to school. I don't cook lunch for anyone. So in the past, I'd have to come up with something for myself, choose not to eat because I'm busy. So instead of getting up and eating, taking 15 minutes even, I just sit through and then be starving. And that's obviously the reason why I wasn't losing weight. I know it wasn't magic, right? That's what was reality. I wasn't eating. And then finally, when I would eat a lot of not very good stuff because it's what there was and I was hungry. So instead, if I can make these juices and just sip through the day, I don't have to stop. Granted, there's still good practice to stop and take a break, but it just felt so much easier for me. I'm going to be sitting here anyways. Why can't I just be feeding myself something good that doesn't take that long for me to prepare?
Right.
Just made it became a part of my routine so easily that then the opposite happened of how do I go back into the real world, I don't want to even eat fruit. I want to stick with the juices, but I knew I had to reintroduce because of the lifestyle and because of the situation. And it ended up being fine. But I got to say, juice tastes even better than the actual fruit. So,
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna round it up. And I think one of the experiences many people have with the juice fasting is feeling this sixth sense, as we say, this connection with something greater, with your own spirit. Did you experience any spiritual shifts in your life during that time, or maybe some realizations and better connection with everyone around you? Because that's the common comment that I get, is that I feel this vibration, I feel this electricity in my body, and I feel like I'm connected with everyone and everything, and with myself too. Did you have any kind of similar experiences to that?
yeah, definitely with the realization that I mentioned earlier of everything that I need is actually out there, especially because we do have a garden. We don't have a whole lot of food, but we have a lot of vegetables. So, one of the reasons why my husband was actually extra supportive of this, or I mean, not as resistant, I should say, or he was supportive in some capacity, was because I started consuming a lot of the things that he had been growing that in the past we ended up having to give away or it would go bad. But there I was juicing a bunch of cucumbers that in the past I wouldn't have, or juicing bell peppers that surprisingly taste really, really good when you juice. And understanding that we could really survive. We can survive off of things you can grow yourself, and just realizing the power of nature, the power of creation, that it doesn't have to be manufactured, that it doesn't have to be packaged. In fact, it shouldn't, and it feels so much better. And I feel like this has evolved through the last few weeks, and it's still something that I am unpacking because it was a lot. It was a lot in 2 weeks, let's just say that way. A lot happened in the 2 weeks that I'm still processing and that it's still coming up, especially because I'm still continuing on with the juices in my daily life. And I think, especially with the realization of I can be happy with who I am today. And the recognition or the special feeling that I had been looking for, that looking at those old pictures I knew I didn't have and I was still searching for. And I think in some capacity we probably will continue to be searching for because we're still alive. But I now know that the feeling that I'm looking for is already inside of me. You know, it's not something that I need to generate outside. I can't. And when we try, that's when we get frustrated. It's something that's already here that I can access at any time. And I can literally just get up and walk out. That's a lot of what I've been processing, and it's going to be featured in my next song. But this feeling that I am loved, that I am recognized, that I am invited. And it doesn't have to be something that somebody necessarily comes to me and tells me. It's just cultivating this feeling of knowing that I am. I don't know if it makes any sense, but that's what I've been going through.
It does. It makes so much sense, and it's beautiful to hear that and to witness this shift and transformation truly. And I really appreciate your time, Marta, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences with me and with my followers. It's been a pleasure working with you and truly witnessing you shine your light brightly. So thank you so much. I really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me, and thank you for shining this light out there and sharing this message. I've been telling Anastasia more people need to know about this because it's almost like it's the secret information. I know it's not because there's communities and lots of people, but for me, it was new in my world. And I know that it's new for many people that are in my world. So I know that this message needs a bigger reach. So thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And I'm going to link all of your offers in my podcast on my channel, so my followers can see your amazing, beautiful work and listen to your song and read your books. Thank you so much.